Lo so che molte persone non pensano a noi lassù sulle montagne. Molti dei miei pazienti sono minatori. È un mestiere pericoloso e portano il peso di costruire un paese sulle proprie spalle. Soffrono molto. Questa gente, la mia gente, si fidava di me. È incredibile quanti di loro siano morti.
Indaghiamo su qualcosa di grosso.
L'Oxycontin.
La Pardiu Pharma pubblicizza il farmaco come se non creasse dipendenza. Ma chiaramente non è così.
Tutti i dottori vi chiederanno come può essere mai possibile. Il vostro argomento più efficace sono le vostre parole magiche.
Meno dell'1%.
Meno dell'1%.
Meno dell'1.
Mi dissero che meno dell'1% ha sviluppato una dipendenza.
Se l'Oxycontin fa quello che penso io, potrebbe diventare il primo farmaco da miliardi di dollari della Pardiu.
So, Michael, the theme of this series is heartbreaking and tragic, and I found in a very intelligent way for me the oxycodone addiction. As an actor, how hard it's to become invested in a story like this, knowing that there really is no resolution for the lives of the people, a lot of people and families that was completely destroyed.
Right. You just dive in, with your heart open, and you try to fill the story as thoroughly as you can. Yes, it's heartbreaking. Yes, it's still evolving. And these journeys that we're telling our story from are all kind of intertwined, and they all seem to have an effect on each other. So I don't feel alone in the telling of the story, and it is a universal story as well. You just open your heart, you walk in the character's shoes, and you hope that you can touch upon some of the truths that were going on at the time.
Your character, Richard, has this incredible stillness in his face. As we can see, it's this in this very long deposition video available online, 8 hours of deposition. Did you start from that face and icy attitude to prepare this character?
There are a number of elements that I utilized to try to step into Dr. Sackler's shoes. Some of it is the published literature that anyone can find that's out there. Initially, we started with Beth Macy's book, and then there were other books that were out there that are also about the opioid epidemic that were very helpful. But yes, that deposition video became a kind of Bible for me to watch him, to watch his reactions to questions, and to try to absorb as much of his character as possible from observing that, yet placing myself in other dramatic situations at the same time.
The terrible story of Dopesick is a very current problem for two reasons. On one hand, the pandemic has accentuated the opiate addiction, and on the other hand, the news of Big Pharma that, according to some fake news, will be making a profit on vaccine has slowed down the vaccination against COVID worldwide. Is there a way to get out to an happy ending in this, in your opinion? Is there an exit strategy?
For the opioid epidemic?
Yeah.
It's a good question. The first step is to educate ourselves upon, what has happened and why it happened. And I would think that we would want to understand from these individuals whose lives were changed by it, why and where we might be able to go to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again. And yes, the pandemic, I'm sure, has raised everyone's sense of claustrophobia and fear at this time, and that never helps. We're all trying to just take care of ourselves and get to the next day. Individuals out out there who are doing what they can to make sure things like this don't happen again. There is an act being, presented to Congress to try to put it in place so that people cannot hide behind their companies, and that they would, as a result of their company's actions, they would become personally responsible for the company's actions. I don't. That's at its inception, at the beginning, right now.
Did you know the story before taking part of the cast of this series? Did you read the Beth Macy's book, or did you find out once they choose you?
Yeah, I'd listened to Beth read her own book after I was hired. Before I was hired, I'd done a short documentary in 2016 about the opioid crisis in Dayton, Ohio, so I was very familiar with it. I think most Americans are at least somewhat familiar with it. It's just that it's actually, we've become so familiar with it, and we hear about it so much, and John says this frequently, it's like we've become inured to it. It's like you just get used to it.
Yeah, I also took a deep dive into Beth's book, which I think for anybody is required reading on the subject, because, and this is another thing we talk about with this project is, with all the different storylines, how do you tie together all the different things that had to happen in order to get us to the place where we are right now? And Beth's book does such a great job of distilling it down and helping people sort of see the constellation. And it was such great source material for the project.
For me, I felt two particular emotions: anger and a sense of quite of helplessness. Mm-hmm. Did you have the same responses when you have filming it and watched the series?
I think so, yes. I think that is, it's not necessarily what the show, I think, will ultimately leave viewers with. That is certainly the emotions that are elicited by the show as you're working your way through it. I think we are left with a feeling of resilience as we see these people sort of work through addiction. We're also left with a sense of hope at the end, because there are good guys who are not making the big bucks, but are doing everything they can to call Big Pharma to account for their sins, for purposefully addicting vast swaths of the American populace. But yeah, it is intense, dark subject matter, and it, I think, affects probably more Americans than we like to talk about.
I think the thing that you come away with, and that I came away with after doing the show and after reading the book and after even going down to Dayton in 2016, is, information is empowering. And the more you know, I think the more empowered you'll feel. You might be at a point in the show where it all just seems like, this very wealthy corporation sort of doing whatever it likes while all these people suffer. Well, you're going to learn more over the course of the series. And if all of us learn more about this, then we will be able to do something about it.
The last question is about the Sarsgaard family, because nobody from the Sarsgaard family got prison time. What are your thoughts about this?
I don't think that there are going to be other Sacklers, right? This isn't the last family that is ever, or company that's ever going to try to do this. The profits are too enormous. I mean, it's like thinking just because, they got fined $4.5 billion, which sounds like a lot to me and you. For them, they still have all the money they need. So unless somebody actually goes to jail and actually an individual suffers consequences, then I think that this continues. It's just getting more invested in what it means to have good health care in our country, where people have really solid relationships with their general practitioner, who's somebody that they have a relationship with that is almost as strong as they might have with their religious advisor, whether it be a priest or a rabbi or whatever, that it is a personal relationship. Then you have some accountability to a doctor. The doctor has some accountability to you. They're not just going to fall to some marketing scheme from some company, because they're thinking about you first and foremost.
What's it like you the most, or even scared you when you were offered to make a TV series about this chilling story? Did you hesitate about this idea, or did you feel that it might help people to know the truth about this addiction?
Yeah, so I was a little hesitant at first. There was actually a bidding war for the book, and I picked the team, which was led by Warren Littlefield, because I could tell he was really impassioned about the issue. And he kept saying, we're going to shine the Klieg light, which I had to look up. I didn't know that phrase, but it's like the power of Hollywood getting more eyeballs into the issue. And so that I hope that by the time you've watched all 8 episodes, you'll come away knowing how we got here, what the impacts of these criminal deeds were, and a really strong message in the last 2 episodes about medication-assisted treatment. And that's the thing I'm most proud of. We really show people being stigmatized when they don't get access, people falling through the cracks. And so I think it's a really strong way to give important education across, but still in a show that's really dramatic and lures you in and is exciting and shocking. And you want to know what happens next.
The series creates characters, but all of them are based on people that you really reported on the book. Is it right, first of all?
Some of them, the real characters, like the Sacklers are real characters, and all of the data about them come from emails or research. I did a lot of research together. We interviewed former employees. And then there's 2 characters towards the end who are based on real people that I write about. And then the victim stories are largely composite. So that was a creative decision Danny made early on before we were partnered together. But the way he tells it is by creating these kind of archetypes, we're able to take all of my research and research that we've read by other journalists and sort of put them into 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 people. So like, for instance, the Michael Keaton character is based on about 3 different doctors, one of whom is a main character in my book, Dopesick.
What was the part of their stories that hurted you most, distressed you most?
Well, in this nation, we have left it largely to families and to volunteers to deal with the worst drug epidemic in the history of the world. And we still follow Richard Sackler's playbook. We hammer the abusers. Remember, he said that in an early email. They are the culprits. They are the criminals. And that hurt me, to see people whose stories I have been following in some cases for 2.5 years, to be cast out by their families, by the systems designed to help them. A woman at the end of Dopesick, her body is found in the bottom of a dumpster on Christmas Eve. This is in my book.